Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. In this video, I'll be sharing a VR to a tag created by Martin of Martin's Musings called Desert Island Decks. And I will link Martin's video below. As the tag sounds like, this is about what we would bring if we were going to be on a desert island, and we are allowed to bring 2 tarot decks, 1 oracle deck, and 1 book. Now, as I understand it, this is a desert island getaway that is elective, that lasts a year. This is not a scenario of dire survival situation, so I haven't incorporated considerations like which deck is the most waterproof, for example. I'm just taking for granted that I don't need to do that, based on the parameters of this being a 1-year kind of chosen getaway. I am assuming that this island does not have access to internet to, for example, order more decks. I've also, with that assumption, opted not to cheat and bring my e-reader as my 1 book so that I could have lots of books, presuming that perhaps, charging it up or downloading books would not be an option. So I have somehow managed to actually stick to the prompts. I tend to cheat on things like this, but I have chosen 2 tarot decks, 1 oracle deck, and 1 book. I'm assuming that when I can bring a deck, that I can also bring its guidebook as well if it has one, or anything else that came with it. But other than that, I have played fairly. So, without further ado, 2 tarot decks I would bring. One of them is probably no surprise to anyone, and that is the Naturescapes Tarot by Tina, Queen of Wands. This copy is in order. I have 2 copies of this deck. One lives in my purse, and I bring it just about everywhere, so I would be bringing it to my island getaway. I feel like with a year on an island, not seeing any other places, not traveling in that year, perhaps not being able to access the internet and look at documentaries and things like that about other places, I would love to have a deck like this with me, to be able to see different landscapes from around the world. It's also just an absolute favorite of mine that I love reading with, for any kind of question, any season, any time. So this one was really a no-brainer as one of the decks that I would bring with me to the desert island. I would probably bring my other copy though, because it's a little bit more beat up, frankly, from use, and also I made a tin for it, so it is better packaged for a year away. So that's the first deck I would bring. The second tarot deck that I would bring is one that is a deck that just feels like home to me. It's a deck that I read with on times like my birthday, and it's the Thea's Tarot by Ruth West. This is a deck that feels like queer ancestors to me. This is a deck that feels like queer community to me. This is one that just is very familiar. It makes me very happy. It's a deck that I think of as, it feels very self-caring and self-loving to read with this deck for me. And I have a few decks like that, but this is definitely the one. And I wanted to have, to go along with the Naturescapes, I wanted to have at least 1 deck with people in it. There's also cats in this deck, since my oracle deck choice also doesn't have people depicted in it. I wanted to have one that did. And I really like this deck, so this is the second Desert Island tarot deck, Thea's Tarot. I love it and would not want to be without it for my year away. Now for the oracle deck, before I mention the oracle deck, I will just say in terms of oracles, I am assuming, and maybe Martin will tell me this is cheating, I don't know, I am assuming that there are trees on this island. And so when I think of oracle, I am assuming that I will, once I get to this island, be able to fashion myself a set of Ogham staves, so I don't need to bring my own Ogham deck. I like reading staves more than I like reading with my own deck anyway. So I'll be able to have Ogham on the island. I also absolutely know that I'll be able to read with Geomancy on the island, because for Geomancy you really need nothing except for some way of generating odd and even numbers, like a home fashioned dice, or a stone with a 1 on one side and a 2 on the other, something like that. So I'm assuming that Geomancy and Ogham are systems that I will be able to work with despite not bringing any tools with me. Maybe that's me cheating. I don't think it's cheating. I think it's being practical and honest about the island. So there you have it. The Oracle deck that I would bring is a deck for Wonder Walking by Amy T. Wan, and maybe it's cheating, maybe it's not, don't care. I'm bringing the big guidebook as well, an explorer's journal for Wonder Walking. And if folks are not familiar with this deck, the premise of the deck is to have the cards shape your reflection or your activities on a walk. So they invite paying attention to particular things, fauna, for example, that you might see on your walk, or dusk. They have journaling activities associated with them, and they're really beautiful watercolor cards, which I will show you. Discernment. It's probably hard to see, but there are titles. The titles are in white text on the bottom. Discernment. Darkness. Enchantment. Fairy worlds. Fauna. And so this deck feels very multi-purpose to me. You can use it, of course, to inspire a walk or an adventure, or to inspire reflection about a walk or adventure that you're taking. But it also reads well as an oracle deck in a more conventional way, shuffling and drawing some cards. I do think that this looks beautiful with naturescapes, and I also think that with Thea's Tarot being black and white, it tends to go with just about any oracle deck. So I also have thought a little bit about, if these are the 3 that I'm going to have with me, can they pair up well without feeling repetitive? And so I think with 3 very different art styles, I have accomplished that. So I think that this would help me on the island not to get bored of my surroundings, being in the same place for a year with only 3 decks and 1 book. And so would help me kind of see the island anew day to day as I go on different adventures. And this would give me lots of journaling prompts. I'm pretty sure that bringing a blank lined notebook, like a journal, is not a violation of the rules of the tag. So I'm going to assume that I can have a journal to write in while I'm away as well. If I couldn't, then I would say that that might have actually been the book that I would bring, would be a journal, but I'm assuming that that's allowed. So for a book, I did pick 1 book, and I picked a philosophy book, actually. I picked Pantheology's Gods, Worlds, Monsters by Mary Jane Rubenstein, and this is a book about pantheism. The introduction on the little jacket of the book reads, "Pantheism is the idea that God and the world are identical, that the creator, sustainer, destroyer, and transformer of all things is the universe itself. From a monotheistic perspective, this notion is irredeemably heretical, since it suggests divinity might be material, mutable, and multiple. Since the excommunication of Baruch Spinoza, Western thought has therefore demonized what it calls pantheism, accusing it of incoherence, absurdity, and with striking regularity, monstrosity. In this book, Mary Jane Rubenstein investigates this perennial repugnance through a conceptual genealogy of pantheisms. What makes pantheism monstrous, at once repellent and seductive, is that it scrambles the raced and gendered distinctions that Western philosophy and theology insist on drawing between activity and passivity, spirit and matter, animacy and inanimacy, and creator and created. By rejecting the fundamental difference between God and world, pantheism threatens all other oppositions that stem from it. Light versus darkness, male versus female, humans versus every other organism. If the panic over pantheism has to do with a fear of crossed boundaries and demolished hierarchies, then the question becomes what a present-day pantheism might disrupt and what it might reconfigure. I have read this book. It's full of pencil marks. I have read this book. I've taken notes on this book, and I'm going to read this book again because as part of my Druidry study in the apprentice grade, we get to choose a couple of books that we think will inform our own personal Druid philosophy, and I chose this book even having already read it. It is one that I think that I will be grappling with for a long time, and so for that reason, I have brought it with me to the desert island. Some folks may be surprised that I didn't pick Octavia Butler or Ursula Le Guin or a science fiction or fantasy book to bring with me, because I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, but really, when it comes to fiction, I'm not a big rereader. I do reread occasionally. This year I do want to reread the Parable series by Octavia Butler, but I'm much more likely to reread and go back again and again to nonfiction, to either philosophy, political philosophy in particular, or sometimes memoirs or autobiographies, things like that. And so if I'm going to have one book and I can't cheat and bring my e-reader, then I want a book that I know that I would be going back to again and again, and that I would want to be pondering for long periods of time, and that I could grapple with for a year and not feel done. So that's why I picked that book. That is my Desert Island decks and book choices. Thank you to Martin for starting this tag. I still kind of can't believe that I didn't do 5 honorable mentions for each category. That feels more like something I would do, but I have managed to make a short video to a VR that is actually mostly, I think, at least close to following the rules. So this has been a lot of fun. I've been really enjoying seeing what other books and decks that folks would bring if they have completed this VR already. I look forward to seeing more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again soon.